maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a common goal. So nowhere in that definition do you see that one person has control over the outcome of the group. And that is really significant. So, I didn't ask my boss if I could So as you see, a social leader is transitioning from being your typical manager to taking a proactive approach towards being a leader. And I love this quote by our deputy, Bush, who says, as a leader, if you don't lead the parade, it will move by without you. The second part is fantastic capturing the message of social media. Be present in the organization, be apparent, be visible. That is directly speaking to every single individual inside the organization. We're not speaking here about all the type of individual. We're actually talking about every single thing can have a difference, can make a difference. Let's now take a closer look to the emerging concepts of social leadership. A social leader is one who has strong business acumen. That hasn't changed. It will never change, especially in the public sector. It's accountable for our HR decisions. But that being said, there are things that do change, and there are these 5 elements. This is the heart of what a social leader is. So it's an individual that communicates through meaningful communication. And we'll dive into each of them. You must possess EQ, your emotional intelligence. When you are your communication, it's key to be able to advise your team. Delivering ongoing recognition. You can't do it if you do not emphasize the positive. Providing authentic leadership, and the final one, the real visibility, which will be the item that we'll talk about later, social branding. A great social leader takes part in communication. More than just delivering a simple message, a social leader ensures that the message is received, validates understanding, and addresses the questions and concerns to ensure that everyone is on the same page. Effective communication often leads to increased productivity, and I'm not referring to email. The social leader ensures that information is provided in a timely manner, is clear, accurate, and relative to the team's current time. That's the key. Because when you receive those corporate messages, what does it mean for the team that you're actually working with? How do you translate that so that you're connecting the dots for your colleagues and making sure that you're understanding that message? Meaningful communication must always be collaborative. A leader can often learn more about issues taking time to actually listen to others in the actual team. Clear and consistent dialogue between managers and their employees is critical for the success of any program or service that we actually do. And we do this through a horizontal collaboration across business. Essentially, for today's social leader, we must depend on horizontal collaboration allows leaders to embrace a holistic approach to organizational goals rather than focusing strictly on individual areas of responsibility. The heart of everything is the emotional intelligence. Strong EQ is an invaluable trait for any leader today. A leader with strong emotional intelligence has a profound sense of self-awareness. You must be self-aware in order to be able to in today's working environment. These individuals have identified their strengths and their weaknesses, and they know how to maximize on those strengths while actually capitalizing the strengths of their team members in the areas of their action. That is significant. The social leader recognizes the importance of establishing and expected personal and professional manner. It must show honorability. At times, their transparency and openness makes some people uncomfortable, but it plays a crucial part in building a stronger relationship with you. Being genuine makes it easier for others to relate to. Another aspect of emotional intelligence is your actual fluency. It's crucial because that's your actual monetary value. The credibility of your reputation is key. It depends and it will help you establish your network because it will help you build your interaction with the interaction. The third element was recognition. The third aspect is important because it gives you information that you need in order to be able to. Recognition doesn't always have to be loud. For most people, a genuine thank you or a good job can make all the difference. My recognition team recently developed a new thank you certificate to encourage informal recognition by CI. I'm proud to say after the launch of this, it's been successful. In less than 2 months, we've issued over 2,600 certificates across the region. That is significant. It's telling to us because what we're seeing is that these certificates are not issued for a formal program, but they're actually issued by employees, thanking their colleagues for their support in order to complete the task, or in order to be able to actually reach out and deliver a service. That is key. That is the secret to a healthy culture, healthy engagement inside our organization. Another element of recognition is usually not seen as an element of recognition is performance review. Performance reviews are important and underappreciated aspect of recognition. You haven't understood this up to now. Today, I'm talking about listening. You need to start seeing performance reviews as a way to control and manage your own career, your own professional development. Receiving positive feedback is inspiring and it is an affirmation that you're an important asset to your organization. That is recognition. That is that you're succeeding in what you were hired to do. That is key in culture and engagement. On the other hand, if you have a healthy organization, you should be able to also discuss negative feedback. When delivered properly, it can also be inspiration. It provides the employee with a sense of where they're going wrong, or where it's not working, where the project is not working, and areas where we need to improve. This matters because across the public service, we're at crossroads of generation and workforce. Within the next 5 years, approximately 45% of the current workforce is eligible to retire. This generation of employees have come to appreciate established recognition practices of rewarding their length of service, sometimes with plaques and gifts, for various milestones throughout their career. By 2025, millennials will represent more than 75% of the workforce in the public sector, in the private sector, in NGOs. This generation of employees comes with a completely different mindset towards recognition. Having grown up in an age of instant gratification, the successful women is recognized. How do you determine what's appropriate recognition? That is key. Why is it key? Because we're still trying to transform the public sector. And recognition will help us do that. The fourth attribute of social leadership is authentic leadership. Authenticity is pivotal. The social leader must always be true to who they are and assume the proper responsibility for both failures and successes. The social leader employs failures as a way to learn and grow. Essentially, the relationship between the social leader and his colleagues, not one of authority. And I really use the term colleagues. I never refer to my team. my employees. They're part of it. Together, we're working forward to achieve our goal. A genuine relationship of trust will come out of that. And cooperation has more potential for successes in the delivery of our services and programs than an authority-based relationship. As mentioned earlier, a good leader is able to identify the strengths of each member of their team and will assign tasks and emphasize these strengths. In specific situations where an employee is proficient, the leader should, actually I would say must, step aside and allow that expert to. That is empowering. That will make a difference. That will contribute towards a positive culture of innovation and research. The result of the work dynamic is that the person who is most suited for a given task can step up and lead, increasing our results. The final element is real visibility. This aspect is achieved through regular walkabout by senior management, engaging in informal conversation. And I mentioned before, that leaders must learn to listen. Active listening is an art that's uncommon. We know that it exists, but a leader must put it into practice to ensure that we're capturing that essence. So walkabouts are strongly recommended. This can have a positive effect on engagement and once again, towards better results. Additionally, this is where it starts stepping into social branding. Social media are wonderful tools. We'll go through and I'll talk about 4 of my favorites right now, but they're not necessarily the only ones that can be used. And you don't decide on your own which tools you're actually going to recommend. You're going to have to get to know your teams in order to see what will work for your team in order to achieve those results. So even that is a collaboration. But a proper use of social media, the social leader can greatly increase their visibility and maintaining a virtual presence. Effective use of these tools in conjunction with the traditional methods like walkabout, where our regular go on, allows the social media to really position programs and the services that they're trying to achieve. This image that you see right here is something that when you Google social leadership or when you do a search on social media tools for social leadership, social leader, you'll notice that you'll find a lot because what they're saying here is that social is not a change for the sake of changing. It's an actual shift on how we think, work, and live. So it's a philosophy, something that you actually need to buy in. Like if you don't believe in it, it won't function. Because that vulnerable part, and that part of being honest and transparent with your team, it's going to come across as being fake. And when it comes across as being not natural and not real, you can't establish and actually build a relationship. So leaders have to actually work on building relationships with their team to get profit. So that ends the first part of the actual workshop. So I want to open it up to questions before we move on to social branding. See some of your thoughts when you actually think about social leadership. If I'm completely off on the side and not relevant, I would like to hear that so that we can have a conversation about what does it mean to you and how do you see it? Because it's important to master these basic steps in order for us to then embark on social branding and actually use the tool to amplify. Because what the tools do is they amplify your voice, they amplify your message.
So Nick, my only observation is I think your 5 elements of leadership is the same that it's always been. It's the tools we will use to talk. Because it's the same leadership skills that I've been in for years for any of the leaders or any leaders, and any of us are leaders. It's the same element. It's just the tools too. That's just the first element. Right?
That's a great point, and it's absolutely true in the sense where this is nothing new, but it's fundamental. along the way, I'm so happy to see that such strong leaders from national managers that have three right now in the group from various parts of the country. It's significant because it's still not happening. Our surveys tell us, regardless of what level of government we're in, it's not happening because of the fact that we can't separate sometimes the pressures of our work with actually the first fundamental responsibility of any leader, which is taking care of your own. That is fundamentally the first step in order to achieve outcomes that we desire. Any other comments around the fundamentals of social vision?
So this makes sense for looking at, to me, younger employees. We're used to being brought up in that culture. But when you're a younger manager or a younger leader, with older employees who come from a culture where managers don't do walkabouts, they're not personal with you, they don't get on that basis with you. How do you then get through to them and still be an effective leader, but not be able to implement everything before?
Such an awesome question. So, before I said you don't need a title to do all this, you don't need a title to do all this. So, I actually expect from my team to do it with themselves. So, normally I do it first thing every morning. I go around, I talk to everyone, I make sure what they have on their plate and so on. But I expect that they do it because they're the leads, right? I'm just there in the front trying to organize and ensure that we're connecting all of those dots. But they're the experts that are leading on that. So they need to be able to do that themselves in order to figure out what's going on. Am I making the proper links? Am I actually doing the right analysis and so on? That is instrumental. That's the shift. So it's not only when you're in a position of authority that you're doing this. You're doing this in order to break silos. You're doing this in order to establish yourself as an expert. We're going to be talking after about how you do it as a social branding. But what you're really doing is saying, I know what I'm talking about and I know what I can do on the table. So you're showcasing that to your colleagues. And that's that shift. And the leaders, the ones that do have the management titles, need to learn to step back and let that happen. Because that's a healthy spot to bring your team in order to engage and then start shifting in the culture that you mentioned.
Manage operation teams and when I was talking about this and policy units, I'm just curious if you have any insight in terms of recognition for various types of individuals because they do definitely
Very, very big question. So it goes back to what I was saying. One of the fundamental first things when you are in a position where you have a team that you're managing is really studying your team, getting to know them. Because recognition is only effective if you actually know what makes your team function, who they are as an actual person. So that's actually significant. That's an excellent point. Because you need to learn who they are in order to personalize. Because even like, for example, if you want to showcase a certificate for years and you're celebrating the 10th anniversary, and you end up doing it during a team lunch or a team dinner, but the person hates it. Because you never really took the time to actually get to know who that individual. That will not only benefit the recognition component, but it's actually going to benefit because sometimes you learn that these people actually have skill sets that might not be in the actual job that they're doing. And might be beneficial to the actual team when leading the organization. So by open dialogue and actually engaging in establishing a real authentic relationship is the only way that you can then provide population the way that they want to see. I'm not talking about the formal ones. All our departments, all of our ministries usually have their formal structured recognitions. I'm talking about anything. They actually did something that they're recognized the way that they want it. Just don't keep track of the time. Again, 15 minutes. Are you still good?
Yeah. Okay.
I was just reflecting on fundamental and thinking about the fact that often less of leadership confidence for development. They don't often think those fundamentals of leaders. And I think that's important things that we should reflect on a little bit.
Oh, I love that question puts me to this position. That's fantastic. So, what I want to say about that is even in the federal level, for example, our key leadership competence, we're seeing an evolution. And I think even the evolution into the 6 key leadership competencies, we're seeing it used in various formats. So I think slowly, because of the sheer size of the organization, we're seeing this turnaround because we're understanding that these 5 elements that I was talking about are actually fundamentals and not really. So principles of what the NMC advocates all the time, take care of your own, actually central to ensure that we actually do that. Yes.
I think that an important part of recognition is not just your telling me good job, really clear about what. So getting that feedback and having that constant feedback rather than just every constant performance review is important to build your.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I made that comment about performance management. Very often, it's like a dirty word in the sector. So you say it, and people feel automatically uncomfortable. But that should happen on a regular basis. That in itself is an actual form of recognition. And it's also because if you do it, that's how you're establishing those real authentic relationships. If you do it like once a year, of course it feels like an awkward exercise that's uncomfortable for both parties involved because there's no authenticity around that. You're not even helping the individuals to see how they actually take a part in achieving goals. You know, like sometimes like just even putting up a board with everybody's name to see what the goal is at the end and how we're actually all moving closer to achieving that goal is a positive way of highlighting it.
What do you think the biggest difference is being social when you have? I don't know.
That's a good question. I find depending on the level that you're at, you can have greater influence. So in the social branding world, we call those our influencers. And those individuals are key. Like when you saw the portrait of my executive up there, significant. So the top needs to do that change. So the top needs to be visible because it will be the biggest influence in order to achieve the shift that you're trying to. So the humanization part, that part of actually connecting, happens from the top. And that's key. So in order to do that. And everyone else just assists. Any other question? Yes.
So the first I got to is how you do it if for a person at the top isn't what you want that.
Usually what happens, and we see it a lot more in the private sector, and that does happen, and here's a perfect example. What happened to Reddit, right? So Reddit was a bunch of communities together, and there was a new CEO put in place, and this CEO did not reflect the value of these communities, did not really represent what that group was trying to achieve. Well, they made the pressure felt. So in private industry or in NGOs, there's a little bit more leeway. But usually in the public sector as well, you feel that pressure when the rest of the organization starts bubbling because you have your influencers at all different levels. You might not have your deputy on board, but you might have a stellar ADM, and maybe a few DGs that are really buying into the culture shift. And therefore, those are the people that you gravitate towards in pushing the message up. It will happen. So you need to believe, one, in your own ability as an influencer, and gravitate towards people that are like-minded. Any other comments? These are great questions. So we'll be sharing all of the material today, including like the questions for an exercise that you can actually implement with your own team. But sometimes start small. Go back to the office. Actually say, hey, I want to do a meeting. Speak to your boss. Let's try something different. Let's have this conversation. Let's make it happen. So there's a series of 4 questions in order to engage around the conversation. And that's where it starts. Let things permeate, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And by having this conversation happen at once, you might start noticing a little change. Are we good to move on with social branding? Well, social branding. So, by effectively utilizing modern social media, you can create and define your own personal brand. So it's usually known as either social branding or personal branding, the same thing. Basically, at the heart of it, basically your story as an individual. It's what you want people to know about who you are, what's important to you, what your values are, what your skills and attributes are, and what expertise can you bring on the team. The process during which you create your own personal brand is important, although often forgotten because we're not used to talking about ourselves. So some people say with social branding, all about you, it's large ego and so on. That's not an effective social branding strategy. Social branding is really just highlighting your expertise and having the tools on social media amplify that expertise. So to illustrate this concept, simply think of like various companies, their products that brand themselves and the role that they play in the way that they perceive or the way that it reflects in their success. To better understand the subject, there's a professor from New York University that says that there's 4 points to actually brand yourself. The first one is that it's important to be mindful of any picture that you share, especially your profile picture. The pictures that you post are really a reflection of what you're trying to send as a message. And this is really key because show of hands, how many people are parents in the room? That's fantastic because like when you're a parent, like right now there's an entire movement. What happens to your actual brand when you're no longer alive? Who owns it? And more significantly, when we live in an era where all of our kids are constantly testing, playing around with different social media tools, and they're posting all kinds of things, and then you look for a job. And more, the first thing that people will do before you come even into it is try to get a picture of who you actually are. So we're going to research. So what kind of image do you actually want to have? That's really key to your actual brand message. And it's the same thing in the public sector. We're going to have to become mindful of these things as we start to move towards a labor market that will become smaller. Because the evolution with the Internet of Things, robotics, everything else is going to become competitive. Therefore, showcasing what you bring to the table is key. So being mindful of your images is really important. And we'll get even into more detail when we build a profile. The second one is to review your post at least twice and make the necessary edits before clicking the button. Okay? So it will really cover this item because it's really specifically important. We're going to go down by and as public servants, we need to live by that. It's important. The third element is that you react with caution. Whenever you respond or react to a post on any social media, do so with a level head and a professional attitude. Sometimes the best response is the response. And the final element that this professor puts forward is that you must be consistent. Don't be one of these individuals that opens like a whole bunch of different sessions. You're not helping your brand, you're not developing it. When you decide that you're going to use one tool, stick with that tool. You're no longer going to use it, sunset it, close it. Be responsible and make sure that it's no longer there. In addition, it's important that you maintain the same name. So this is really key. This professor really advocates this. I fundamentally believe this. That you have to, when you're building your profile, if you're deciding that you're not using it for your personal, but you're using it on a professional level, then you're not, I don't know, allocating much of it. It just doesn't work. So you should be using your actual name and establishing yourself as that leader that you actually are. So we get into the part where, and I'm actually going to ask Anna, I want to periscope this out. We're actually going to periscope a portion of the presentation. Anna is in charge of the recognitions program at CRA. She's the Award of Excellence. Thank you. So we're going to be covering 4 tools today. So 4 tools that I actually advocate as essential in building a professional brand. Those 4 tools are LinkedIn, About Me, Twitter, and finally Periscope. So LinkedIn is a tool designed specifically for the business community. Its professional use is considerable. You can use this site to detail your employment history, your education, and general professional background. This resource is best used to build your professional network. This tool also allows you to publicize your CV, your articles, and keep in touch while maintaining and building your network, and allows others to endorse your expertise and your actual knowledge and ability. By properly using this tool, you have access to other experts, service providers, and even potential clients. Also, businesses can borrow in order to actually use knowledge and potentially exchange information. The second tool is About Me. This is a great tool that not many people understand. So it's completely free. And About Me is primarily you're able to showcase your accomplishments, your interests, your future goals. So basically, this is your bio. In one snapshot, you actually have your bio illustrated. You can also link your other tools to it. You could, if you have a Twitter account, use professionally a Facebook page, you can put it here. So you're able to make those links, and it's a place where everyone will be able to get clear content. And they've also partnered with Google. This is extremely interesting. So when someone does a search on you, have an About Me account, the first hit. So why is this important? Because what I was talking about is that you're controlling your image. You're controlling what people see of you, what you want them to see as the professional leader you are. So this is extremely powerful. That first hit on the page will be your About Me account. So you can actually demonstrate who you are, what you know in one snapshot. The third tool is currently my favorite tool, Twitter. So Twitter, as you all know, is a microblog. It's also an amazing resource for staying informed and on current issues, communities of practice, as well as experts in your field. For a social and professional standpoint, you need to consider Twitter as your business card. So gone are those days of accumulating all those cards, business cards, and creating that Rolodex. This is your virtual Rolodex. There's a colleague that Joy and I work with very often, the head of Transport Canada, who says all the time, when I go into the office, I'm not one public servant, I'm 1,500 public servants. So if I need something, if I need to actually exchange, brainstorm, or if I even need to reserve a room and I can't find one in my building, I can ask my colleagues, do you have a spare room that I have to host something? That is powerful. That is your virtual Rolodex, okay? And Twitter, what's really nice about it is that you can also add, obviously, as you all know, your pictures in order to help tell your story. How many people in the room have a Twitter account? Great. One thing that you should do at the end of the session is make sure that you interact and network with each other and add each other on, because that's powerful. Not only were you in the session together and you're understanding the importance of network, building your resources and contacts, but now you have a whole bunch of people that you can exchange and continue to grow that community. Because it's all about building your community, contacts and networks. And Twitter does that unlike any other tool. But you can also push it a lot further, and I've been experimenting with it. So when I said I went into my new team, I sat down and I met with all of them, and I was trying to see how they would want to do it. And then I also wanted to see what my job would be like. And I would try and manage expectations and so on, and also like see how do people communicate information. Well, I started noticing that we get a lot of things. So I started noticing that if my team needed something, this was the best way for them to reach me. This was not the best way to communicate. We all have lives, remember? Social leadership is about us, about connecting and making a human connection. Something happens to us and you're trying to reach your manager, but you can't communicate through regular chat. But you need a day off, or you need like a half a day off in order to address something that's happening in your personal life. Well, we sat down together and we had a conversation. None of them at the time were actually on Twitter, but we had a little presentation. Like I told them like how I felt about the tool. I asked them if they would feel comfortable trying it out. Just as a way for us to develop a relationship and actually trying to connect with each other. Now, if somebody wants a day off or somebody needs something, they DM me. When they're saying, oh, one of your files has hit a roadblock, get to the office now, they know how to reach me right now. That's key, because this is where I'm saying that you can build those relationships, that you build an environment of trust. And those are those cultural pieces that are important. That's the business value of these tools. But it's important to remember, you can't impose it. It needs to be a consensus. What works for one team might not work for another. And that's important as well to realize in the conversation. So I just want to recap the first three before we go into Periscope. Because Periscope is a universe on its own. So LinkedIn, what it is, snapshot your CV. So every time you do a process, so it's important to remember those activities that for each of the positions that you held. If you build it and actually take care of it on a regular basis, it's already done for you. You're not reinventing that wheel. So invest in building that profile. So it's your CV. About me, your bio. Control that image right from the start. Link then your LinkedIn on it, and you have a powerful combination because you have your bio, which usually can be your intro letter, right? And then you have your CV. And then when you add the other element, the other piece to the trinity, which is your Twitter, then you're microblogging. And you're actually positioning yourself as the expert that you showcase on your CV and in your bio. So what are you actually contributing? And there are rules. Some people tell you there's no rules around Twitter and actually, there are ways of doing it. And what's important to remember that, let's say in every 10 tweets that you send out there, that you share, that you engage with your followers, about 5 of them should be from other experts in the same area of interest. Those individuals will help to your credibility and will help in building your network. And 3 of the other tweets that follow in the series of 10 should come from you. We need to hear your voice. We need to hear what you bring to the plate. And that's also important. And the last 2 tweets should be personal. What makes you human? What makes you tick? And I'd love just to share a little story, a quick little story with you. I wasn't on social media before joining the federal government. I actually started in the private sector. And actually, thanks to Jody Lawano, I actually think I got onto it. So the way that it happened was that I started off, and I didn't really feel comfortable. It's normal activity. So I kept on just putting out messages about my expertise, what I wanted to share with them. And then one day I was in Italy with my son, and I was so overwhelmed because I was in my parents' hometown. And I was where my mom was born, and I was so happy to be there with my little boy that I snapped a picture and shared it, not thinking anything about it. Go back to the office, and one of my colleagues tells me, "What a great picture of you and your little boy." My first reaction was to apologize. I'm so sorry, thinking like I just took something that I was trying to portray myself as this professional and put something personal. Her response to me blew me away, and that's when I started thinking. She says, "No, Nick." She says, "That was awesome." She says, "The first time that I actually figured out that you were human." Because everything about you was always about work. So it's so important to be able to show our colleagues what makes us tick. That's part of establishing that community of trust, building that sense of engagement that we need in order to push our products and services directly to the population. So that's extremely important. Periscope. So how many people in the room know what Periscope is all about? So as you can see, it's a relatively new. So it's a brand new app for those that are wondering. And it works in conjunction with Twitter. So right now, you see Anna, she's filming this live broadcast. So as it's actually happening here in the room, everyone has an opportunity to actually follow it live, interact. So stay onto the camera. So this is happening actually live. But what happens is that this tool is powerful because video, like pictures, can really assist you in establishing yourself as that expert. So it's a perfect way to actually brand what your expertise is. But for a leader in a management position, extremely powerful. Because what does it do? When you have large organizations, you can't necessarily speak and see everyone. It's just physically impossible when you're spread across a country as big as ours. But when you're able to deliver a message on what feels like on one-on-one, that is empowering. That is extremely powerful for any leader to understand. When you understand that, you can maximize those efforts and really then help stir the ship and move it towards where you're trying to drive. That is key to effective social media. So right now we're still experimenting. We're still playing with this tool. It's completely new to us, and we learn as we go. One of the best parts of it, though, is that when you're, right now, for example, when we're broadcasting, what happens is that it generates a video. So we didn't need to have an elaborate camera crew in here, have all kinds of instruments to generate a video to then reach out to people. At the end of this, I can take this little presentation and put it on the YouTube channel. Or I can put it on an internal content. I can share with anyone my message at any time, making it extremely efficient for any professional trying to get a specific outcome. So, do you guys want to hear a little bit more about Periscope, about how the do's and don'ts, or do you want to prefer in a question format? Go ahead. Yes, no. for Periscope in particular. Okay. So, because I really want to get to a conversation of building a profile. So, it's important that you realize when you're using Periscope to put your phone and actually not disturb it. And that's really important because or else you're always cutting off as things are actually happening. Your ID in Periscope and the hashtag so that people can actually research it, it's the first point that you should, because it has a limited amount of characters on what you actually use to search it. So you should actually start with the actual hashtag. Title comes next. And it's important to remember in the actual settings to always save your scope. So you're actually saving your view. Okay? So as you can see, I didn't touch on Facebook. So you might be wondering, why not? So this is the part where I really want to discuss a few things. Everything that I'm advocating here, I'm advocating on the you side. During no time did you magically become responsible for your own department, to speak on behalf of your own department. So you don't have that duty. And not having that duty, I personally, this is because like I mentioned, social branding is all about what you prefer. Maybe none of these tools will speak to you, but maybe other tools would. I just felt that when building my profile, I didn't need it. But on a corporate level, it can be used. Like for example, if I think a strategic way of using Facebook account for any organization might be towards recruitment. When less and less students are actually going to email accounts. Many Canadian universities right now are like eliminating email communication altogether. They're starting to personalize the way that they reach out to their students. So I just wanted to mention very quickly that it can be in your personal branding, and that's for you to decide on how and what you actually want to interact. So that's the end of the actual 4 tools that I wanted to cover. Periscope. Before we get into the building, I just wanted to see how we feel now at this part. Now that we integrated with the social leadership, the actual element of social branding. Yes.
I don't know. Nick, that was really good. I found that this is what I need. This is exactly what I think we all agree on that. And I found it very, very helpful as a manager right now. I've been trying to find my way, taking away the personal side of me and trying to be the professional side of me. And everyone who's younger than me, is all of those tools. And I find it really intimidating because it seems like it hit me all at once. And I'm like, God, I manage safety, security, emergency services, so they want it. And I find I'm like, oh my gosh, I need someone to do this for me or help me with. That's what my question is for you. I really would love to know who can help set this up. Like I'm set up on Twitter and I'm set up on Facebook. I'm set up on a number of these things. But to have someone check through, is there a place we have developed or a place you can go to get, just like you used to go to the career counseling center to get help on your resume? That's what I need for the for all these things. Like who can I go to look at my account? Right? Like I need help like that.
Yeah.
So,
that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, there is not like an official spot. What there is a space, though, a very big space of actual advocates or influencers that actually support and will reverse mentor, right? So reverse mentoring is really key, and I'm so happy Lisa Sullivan is here in this show. She's the national chair of the Federal Youth Network, and they have a great reverse mentoring list at the federal level, where anyone that has a skill set in any of these tools can put it on there with their contact information of how they want to be reached. So when you're curious about something, you can actually reach out. That's one way of reaching out. Or another way of reaching out is by using hashtags, right? So you're curious about more about social branding and social leadership. Put another question out there. Looking for a reverse mentor, someone to coach me on a few of these tools, and you can actually name the tools. And you will get a response back. You will get links. You will get the help that you're looking for because these tools work on a sense of community. And that's what makes them work. One of the things that I'm dealing with right now is everything that has to do with the digital workplace of the future. So I'm also a reverse mentor on the policy and innovation. And I'm having some interesting conversations with some of those mentors where we say that there's some fantastic tools that we develop inside government, but we're developing them either to duplicate the tools that already exist, okay, in the world in order to secure it. But when it doesn't even need to be secured because the conversations that we're having is more about us becoming effective than we actually function and work and develop ourselves. So by the time that we develop this tool to mimic what's out there, the rest of the world has moved on to something else. So that's an issue, and it's a real problem that we're trying to address and see how can we help our institutions move forward and address this concern, because it's a legitimate concern for our concern.
No, it's okay.
My name's Adam Biggers, Free Policy. I agree with everything you're saying. My question is really, how do you get our be able to do something? There are these processes where assessment say extremely stringent your messaging, so give a practical example. My chief negotiator simply shares that no reflection of the stance, creative, how is that going to sensitivities and problems, CBC, all these Sable, chief negotiator is information, this reflection of their stance. Reality, all of his probably is all of his employees who's following them, but look, this is our, I agree. So I see the perfect world that yet to be this process. From my perspective, I was it's very strict. It's old, it's that's right. All so then all of a sudden now, like you're saying, works perfect world. Everyone is there. How's that?
I wish I had prizes because that's a fantastic question. So yesterday I actually delivered this presentation. So I work for the Canada Revenue Agency, like I mentioned, for auditors, right? And some of them do criminal investigation. So talking about branding and telling them that they need to advocate their expertise, they need to be out there. No, that probably would be the worst thing that they could possibly do, both from a sense of their professional responsibilities, but even for the reality of security, right? So when I'm saying that you need to advocate and you need to showcase your expertise, we also need to do two other things. Use our common sense. And the other point is ensure that we're respecting code of ethics and values at all times. Because our first function is to be a public servant. So if your day job does not allow you to advocate or to share an article because it might be perceived, and in there certain circumstances it will be perceived as either sometimes an endorsement, and by the way, when you indicate on your profile a tweet and a retweet is not an endorsement doesn't really work. So, because you're still accountable, because you're still a public servant. So you need to be vigilant. But that doesn't mean that you're not in need of developing a network where you can actually continue building on that knowledge and actually establishing yourself as simply a public servant, right? And building a community where you can still think about your own development in the areas that you might be interested in. It just means that you have to exercise, like that professor from New York University was saying, due diligence before you start pressing and posting your articles. You need to give that second thought before you post. And you have to be responsible when doing it. So there's no magical answer in the sense where every time you post something, you should have that reflex of saying, am I doing the right thing? And the way that I use it all the time is that before I post something, I say, is it okay if it makes the newspaper tomorrow? Every newspaper in the country is going to post it. Probably not a good thing that you're posting. So that's a good check as well. Question?
Well, I guess continue what Adam was saying. Right now,
Yes.
so as public servant, I mean, yes, we have a certain responsibility, but these are this is our account. Like this is the output. Well, it's not so much a personal, but it's more of a reflection of who I am. So if I want to portray and I want to be able to express my feelings about certain topics so that I can create a network, but yet I'm a public servant, so people know that I'm affiliated with a certain department, then it's going back to almost what Adam was saying, is how do you give and how do you express yourself, yet not almost get in trouble for expressing yourself?
Yeah. So as you all know, like at the federal level, of course, it's the Public Service Commission that sets those guidelines, and they're being shared explicitly on social media. Plus, we receive internal comms on how to behave, right? Caretaker government. And the same way that I would advocate that you wouldn't stand, because people, regardless of the fact, even in the past, when we didn't have these tools, the only difference is that they amplify your message. You have a quicker reach in order to send off your message, right? But the same way that you wouldn't stand at the corner with an actual billboard advocating a position or so on, you still have a responsibility as a public servant. So I'm saying that you need to be able to balance those two. You can't separate the two. You make a choice. You're making a choice to be a public servant. You have to realize where your boundaries are on what you can and cannot say. It doesn't matter if you say it on social media or if you say it a busy street on a bus somewhere. If people know who you are, your message is still going to be. We have to owe it to ourselves to be ethical.
I mean, I can see people of my generation. For example, definitely true thing. Just career. I knew that. And I hope he has a sense of humor, and I don't work for CRA.
That's too bad for you then.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to know what your anecdotal evidence was for buy-in. Did everyone try it? Were there some resistors? Were they overwhelmed by the people? Did try it?
Yeah. So I'm actually very happy. I actually have a team member here with me. So I'm Taylor, who's responsible for the actual overall excellence for the agency. So when we had our meeting, none of them were on social media. And it's really funny because we're a very diverse team, very diverse generationally. And I wasn't sure what the buy-in was going to be, and they weren't too convinced, right? At the beginning. And they understood it though when I made it clear why I wanted to try something, because I was trying just to be able to connect with them. So So what we did was we actually did give it a try, but I did it in a pragmatic way, right? So at the agency, when you want to use certain tools, you still have to make a request to the manager to your local IT in order to grant access. Because the first step was, if we were going to use it for a work purpose, I couldn't expect, as the manager, for my employees to use their own personal devices or their own personal data. It was going to become like a tool that we would interact and actually use it for work. They had to be able to access it on the desktop. So that was step one. So once we broke that initial barrier, then we started actually using and experimenting with it, where I would actually send them like even sometimes little jokes or little messages through direct messages by creating a group so that they would get to see what the tool is all about and how they can actually interact with me and get to know. What I have noticed is that I have two teams. So that's a team that reports directly to me, the side of the house. But then I also have national test services, where there's a manager that manages a team of a certain number of individuals that report into. I did notice that there's a huge difference when employees don't directly report to a social. The buy-in is a little harder. So that's why I was saying that it's so important to live it, right? You get direct connection with the team, with the buy-in. So I would say with that other side of my team, we're about halfway there. So I don't have the same access to that. So we're trying different approaches in order to build that relationship. So it's an interesting experiment.
And just to follow up, I think it's a good idea because by adding another tool to the toolbox, because a lot of people, and for those who don't, I mean, I don't throw GC my tools under the bus, but that's just another thing that now I need to be plugged into. The number of things that get plugged into gets too large and
And like I mentioned at the beginning, when you have too many, but you're not curating the image and you're not working on it, to actually have. The tool is not there to overburden you, it's there to assist you. So if it doesn't work in assisting you, then there's really no point. Yes.
What's your opinion on positive versus
I actually think that it helps in establishing a culture, a positive cultural environment. When we're experimenting, I have to say that we're very lucky at the Canada Revenue Agency because both senior management, but as well middle management, are starting to embrace these technologies in order to try and develop that. And up to now, we have not had any situation where we see this. I think public servants understand the way that it functions, but it simply allows to actually position the message better. So we're seeing that there's better needs. The first time that my APM on my communicated with me a direct message, I was blown away. It made me so happy, and it was like such an efficient way of reaching out and leading by example, because that's what it does. You're showcasing that it's okay. It's a safe space to lead in, and it's a safe space to embark in and actually show the way that you can progress as a positive way. So I'm not sure how much time we have left. 7 minutes. So we're gonna go because so we're gonna go over Twitter really quickly because I think it's important to show you some of the elements that I've chit-chatting about before. So I just want to go back quickly. When you open it, I really strongly advocate if you don't have a Twitter account, that you use your personal email, not the email that you use. Simply because right now, specifically partners, we're not all interconnected, and you need to be able to manage your account at all times. And the other reason, even more important, is that you're not doing it on behalf of the different, you're doing it for yourself. So that's an important point to remember, that you're only doing this for your own growth and development. So this is a screenshot of what you get when you start building your profile. And I'm going to use it as an example, but I've done it with mine. So picture. So when I was referring to getting something, it's usually a headshot, probably their best thing to do is just like a simple headshot, clear smile. This is not a passport picture. So we're trying to build, a sense of community belonging. It's important that we're able to actually showcase no mugshot, we don't do any of that. And nothing exactly with you to showcase either like a baseball cap or holding a glass of wine. You're using it on a professional level. Headshot with a smile, best thing that you can do. Where you can personalize is what we call your header right behind you. So right behind your profile picture. Here, you can either show what you're trying to get across as a message, your expertise, or you can actually showcase what makes you special, what makes you unique, what are you passionate about, like your last vacation or something. Or if you do enjoy your pastime to play golf, why not post it there? It will give you something to relate with others. So the header is a great place to actually indicate it. Your name. So my full name is Nicolino. I never use it. Only my grandparents. So I decided that I would showcase my name because it's a professional account, but then in my handle, which basically Twitter calls that your user ID, I put down name because that's personalizing it, showcasing it, building a relationship. You can change that. So that's actually a great point. And I'll take it really quickly and possibly will be the last thing I'll cover. Why does it matter? Is because some people have asked me in previous sessions, what happens if I already have an account but now I want to transition? Can I transition or should I not transition? Because if you're telling me that there's no separation between personal and professional, so how do we do that? It depends what you used it for. If your account wasn't really used at a very professional level, very personal, or things that are not appropriate, I might reach it, close it, and start branding. If you are, you do it in a transitional, if it's still positive and it's something that you can transition, I would do it incrementally. I would switch it by first doing your bio, doing your picture, putting your banner up, and then slowly start integrating your tweets so that you start positioning yourself as an actual expert. I want to move a little quicker because I want to get to something else that any leader can use. And all this you'll have access to, which is the end of the there's this direct message, yes. So direct message is what allows you to communicate one-on-one. It's an efficient tool to have communication.
It's an option.
Yeah. Actually, around our office, you hear it all the time. Just DM me. So what I want to bring your attention to is right over here. Like when you have a tweet, this is a new feature, the analytic component of Twitter now. There's 3 little bars at the bottom of the tweet. This is powerful because this allows you to see the reach of your message, how far you can actually take the message and to whom it's going. So when you expand it, like it gives you details. And this was right after we did a post on what it takes to be an executive on social today. The responses, after not even an hour, we saw that we had about close to 2,500 impressions. So how far in feeds, the feeds is like the actual communication that you have, that you're reading from all of your followers, how far it reached out to. It reached out like 2,500 people. But more significantly, in order to reach out to that amount of people, it only took 75 of my own followers to reach out that quickly. That is power. And when you actually indicate it and combine it effectively in a strategy of communication for a leader that is allowed to speak on behalf of an organization, it's very far-reaching. So you're able to build those networks and continue to move ahead your programs. So I just wanted to end it there. There's a lot more that we can discuss. I'm very happy to discuss offline well, either on social media or in person. And thank you very much for a great session.